Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 195th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the ship capsized with all on board, each sought his own safety. And as for Marzawan, the set of the sea carried him under the king's palace, wherein was Kamar al-Zaman. And by the decree of destiny it so happened that this was the day on which King Shahriman gave audience to his grandees and high officers, and he was sitting with his son's head on his lap, whilst a eunuch fanned away the flies, and the prince had not spoken, neither had he eaten nor drunk for 2 days, and he was grown thinner than a spindle. Now the Wazir was standing respectfully at foot near the lattice window, giving on the sea, and raising his eyes, and saw Marazan being beaten by the billows, and at his last gasp, whereupon his heart was moved to pity for him. So he drew near to the king, and moving his head towards him, said, I crave thy leave, O king, to go down to the court of the pavilion, and open the water gate, that I may rescue a man who is at the point of drowning in the sea, and bring him forth of danger into deliverance. Peradventure, on this account, Allah may free thy son from what he hath. The king replied, O thou Wazir, enough is that which hath befallen my son, though thee and on thine account. Happily, if thou rescue this drowning man, he will come to know our affairs, and look on my son who is in this state, and exult over me. But I swear by Allah, that if this half-drowned wench come hither and learn our condition, and look upon my son, and therefore fare forth and speak our secrets to any, I will assuredly strike off thy head before this. For thou, O my minister, art the cause of all that hath betided us, first and last. Now do as thou wilt. Thereupon the Wazir sprang up, and opening the private postern which gave unto the sea, descended to the causeway, then walked on 20 steps, and came to the water, where he saw Marzawan nigh unto death. So he put out his hand to him, and catching him by his hair, drew him ashore in a state of insensibility, with belly full of water, and eyes half out of his head. The Wazir waited till he came to himself, when he pulled off his wet clothes, and clad him in a fresh suit, covering his head with one of his servants' turbans, after which he said to me, Know that I have been the means of saving thee from drowning. Do not thou requite me by causing my death and thine own. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 196th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the Wazir did to Marzawan what he did, he thus addressed him, Know that I have been the cause of saving thee from drowning. So requite not me by causing my death and thine own. Asked Marzawan, And how so? And the Wazir answered, Thou art at this moment about to go up and pass among emirs and wazirs, all of them silent, and none speaking, because of Kamar al-Zaman, the son of the Sultan. Now when Marzawan heard the name of Kamar al-Zaman, he knew that this was he whom he had heard spoken of in sundry cities, and of whom he came to search. But he feigned ignorance, and asked the Wazir, And who is Kamar al-Zaman? Answered the minister, He is the son of Sultan Shahriman, and he is sore sick, and lieth strown on his couch, restless always, eating not, nor not drinking, neither sleeping night or day. Indeed, he is nigh upon death, and we have lost hope of his living, and are certain that he is dying. Beware, lest thou look too long on him, or that thou look on any place other than that where thou settest thy feet, else thou art a lost man, and I also. He replied, Allah upon thee, O Wazir, I implore thee of thy favour. Acquaint me touching this youth thou describest, what is the cause of the condition in which he is in? The Wazir replied, I know none, save that 3 years ago his father required him to wed, but he refused, whereat the king was wroth and imprisoned him. And when he awoke on the morrow, he fancied that during the night he had been roused from sleep, and had seen by his side a young lady of passing loveliness, whose charms tongues could never express. And he assured us that he had plucked off her seal ring from her finger, and had put it on his own hand, and that she had done likewise. But we know not the secret of all this business. So by Allah, O my son, when thou comest up with me into the palace, look not on the prince, but go thy way, for the Sultan's heart is full of wrath against me. So said Marzawan to himself, by Allah, this is the one I sought. Then he followed the wazir up to the palace, where the minister seated himself at the prince's feet. But Marzawan found, forsooth, nothing to do but go up to Kamar al-Zaman and stand before him at gaze. Upon this the wazir died of a fright in his skin, and he kept looking at Marzawan and signaling him to wend his way, but he feigned not to see him, and gave not over gazing about Kamar al-Zaman, till he was well assured that it was indeed he whom he was seeking. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 197th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Marzawan looked about upon Kamar al-Zaman and knew that it was indeed he whom he was seeking, he cried, Exalted be Allah, who hath made his shape even as her shape, and his complexion as her complexion, and his cheek as her cheek. Upon this, Kamar al-Zaman opened his eyes and gave earnest ear to his speech, and when Marzawan saw him inclining to hear, he repeated these couplets: I see thee, full of song and plaint and love's own ecstasy, delighting in describing all the charms of loveliness. Art smit by stroke of love, or hath shaft-shot wounded thee? None save the wounded ever show such signals of distress. Ho, thou crown the wine cup and sing me singular praises to Suleiman al-Rabab, Tanuman addressed. Go round the grapevine sun, which for mansion hath a jar, whose east the cup-boy is, and here my mouth that opes for west. I'm jealous of the very clothes thou dare her sides enroll, when she veils her dainty body of the delicatest grace. I envy every goblet of her lips that taketh toll, when she sets the kissing cup on that sweetest kissing place. But deem not by the keen-edged scimitar I'm slain. The hurts and harms I dree are from arrows of her eyes. I found her fingertips as I met her once again, deep reddened with the juice of the wood that ready dies, and cried, Thy palms thou stainest when far away one eye, and this, and how payest one distracted by his pine? Quoth she, enkindling in my heart a flame that burned high, speaking as one who cannot hide of longing love the sign. By thy blame, this is no dye used for dyeing, so forbear thy blame, nor in charging me with falsing love persist. But when upon our parting day I saw thee haste to fare, the while were bared my hand and my elbow and my wrist, I shed a flood of blood-red tears, and with fingers brushed away, hence blood-reddened were the tips, and still blood-red they remain. Had I wept before she wept, to my longing love I pray, before repentance came, I had quit my soul of pain. But she wept before I wept, and I wept to see her care, and I said, All the merits appertains to precedent. Blame me not for loving her. Now, on self of love I swear for her sake, for her only, these pains my soul torment. She hath all the leer of Luqman, and Yusuf's beauty lief, sweet singer David's voice, and Maryam's chastity. While I've all Jacob's mourning, and Jonah's prison grief, and the sufferings of Job, and old Adam's history, yet kill her not, albeit of my love for her I die, but ask her why my blood to her was lawful. Ask her why. When Marzawan recited this ode, the words fell upon Kamar al-Zaman's heart as freshness after fever, and returning health, and he sighed, and turning his tongue in his mouth, said to his sire, O my father, let this youth come and sit by my side. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 198th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Kamar al-Zaman said to his sire, O my father, allow this youth to come and sit by my side. Now when the king heard these words from his son, he rejoiced with exceeding joy, though at the first his heart had been set against Marzawan, and he had determined that the stranger's head needs must be stricken off. But when he heard Kamar al-Zaman speak, his anger left him, and he arose, and drawing Marzawan to him, seated him by his son, and turning to him said, "Praised be Allah for thy safety." He replied, "Allah preserve thee, and preserve thy son to thee," and called down blessings on the king. Then the king asked, "From what country art thou?" And he answered, "From the islands of the inland sea, the kingdom of King Gyar, lord of the isles, and the seas, and the 7 palaces." Quoth King Shahriman, "Maybe thy coming shall be blessed to my son, and Allah vouchsafe to heal what is in him." Quoth Marzan, "Inshallah, naught shall be save what shall be well." Then turning to Kamar al-Zaman, he said to him in his ear, unheard to the king and the court, "O my lord, be of good cheer, and hearten thy heart, and let thine eyes be cool and clear. And respect to her for whose sake thou art thus, ask not of her case on thine account, but thou keepest thy secret, and fellest sick, while she told her secret, and they said she had gone mad. So now she is in prison, and an iron chain about her neck, in a most piteous plight. But Allah willing, the healing of both of you shall come from my hand." Now, when Kamar al-Zaman heard these words, his life returned to him, and he took heart, and he felt a thrill of joy, and signed to his father to help him sit up. And the king was like to fly for gladness, and rose hastily and lifted him up. Presently, of his fear for his son, he shook the kerchief of dismissal, and all the emirs and wazirs withdrew. Then he set 2 pillows for his son to lean upon, after which he bade them perfume the palace with saffron, and decorated the sitting, saying to Marzawan, "By Allah, O my son, of a truth thine aspect to be a lucky and blessed." And he made as much of him as he might, and called for food. And when they brought it in, Marzawan came up to the prince and said, "Rise, eat with me." So he obeyed him and ate with him. And all the while the king invoked blessings on Marzawan, and said, "How auspicious is thy coming, O my son." And when the father saw his boy eat, his joy and gladness redoubled, and he went out and he told the prince's mother and all of the household. Then he spread throughout the palace the good news of the prince's recovery, and the king commanded the decoration of the city, and it was a day of high festival. Marzawan passed that night with Kamar al-Zaman, and the king also slept with them in joy and delight of his son's recovery. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 199th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that King Shahriman also passed that night with them in the excess of his joy for his son's recovery. And when the next morning dawned, and the king had gone away, and the 2 young men were left alone, Kamar al-Zaman told his story from beginning to end to Marzawan, who said, "In very sooth, I know her whom thou didst foregather. Her name is the Princess Budur, and she is the daughter of King Gaya." Then he related to him all that had passed with the princess from first to last, and acquainted him with the excessive love she bore him, saying, "All that befell thee with thy father hath befallen her with hers, and thou art without doubt her beloved, even as she is thine. So brace up thy resolution and take heart, for I will bring thee to her, and unite you both anon, and deal with you even as saith the poet, I'll be to lover adverse to his love, and show aversion howso may he care. Yet will I manage that their persons meet, eyen on the pivot of a scissor pair." And he ceased not to comfort and solace and encourage Kamar al-Zaman, and urge him to eat and drink till he ate food and drank wine, and life returned to him, and he was saved from his ill case. And Marzawan cheered him and diverted him with talk and songs and stories, and in good time he became free of his disorder, and stood up and sought to go to the Hammam. So Marzawan took him by the hand, and both went to the bath, where they washed their bodies and made them clean. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 200th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Kamar al-Zaman, son of King Shahriman, went to the Hammam, his father, in his joy at this event, freed the prisoners and presented splendid dress to all his grandees and bestowed large alms gifts upon the poor and bade decorate the city 7 days. Then quoth Marzawan to Kamar al-Zaman, Know, O my lord, that I came not from the Lady Budur save for this purpose, and the object of my journey was to deliver her from her present case, and it remaineth for us only to devise how we may get to her, since thy father cannot brook the thought of parting from thee. So it is my counsel that tomorrow thou askest leave to go abroad hunting. Then do thou take with thee a pair of saddlebags full of money, and mount a swift steed, and lead a spare horse. And I will do the like, and say to thy sire, I have a mind to divert myself with hunting the desert, and to see the open country, and there to pass one night. Suffer not any servant to follow us, for as soon as we reach the open country, we will go our ways. Kamar al-Zaman rejoiced in this plan with great joy, and cried, It is good. Then he stiffened his back, and going in to his father, sought his leave, and spoke as he had been taught. And the king consented to his going forth a hunting, and said, O my son, blessed be this day that restoreth thee to health. I will not gainsay thee in this, but pass not more than one night in the desert, and return to me on the morrow, for thou knowest that life is not good to me without thee. And indeed, I can hardly believe thee to be wholly recovered from what thou hadst, because thou art to me as he of whom quoth the poet, I'll be by me, I had through day and night Solomon's carpet and the Khosrow's might. Both were in value less than wing of gnat, unless these eyne could hold the eye in sight. Then the king equipped his son Kamar al-Zaman and Marzawan for the excursion, bidding them make ready for them 4 horses together, with a dromedary to carry the money, and a camel to bear the water and the belly timber. And Kamar al-Zaman forbade any of his attendants to follow him. His father farewelled him, and pressed him to his breast, and kissed him, saying, I ask thee, in the name of Allah, be not absent from me more than one night, wherein sleep will be unlawful to me, for I am, even as he saith the poet, Thou present in the heaven of heavens I dwell, bearing thine absence is of hell's my hell. Pledge be for thee my soul, if love for thee be crime, my crime is of the fellest fell. Does love low burn thy heart as burns it mine? Do night and day Sihenna fire to smell. Asked Kamar al-Zaman, O my father, Inshallah, I will lie abroad but one night. Then he took leave of him, and he and Marzawan mounted, leading the spare horses, the dromedary and the money, and the camel with the horse and the water and the victuals, turned their faces towards the open country. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 201st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Kamar al-Zaman and Marzawan fared forth, and turned their faces towards the open country. And they travelled from the first of the day till nightfall, when they halted, and ate and drank, and fed their beasts, and rested a while. After which they again took horse, and ceased not journeying for 3 days. And on the 4th they came to a spacious tract, wherein there was a thicket. There alighted in it, and Marzawan, taking the camel and one of the horses, slaughtered them, and cut off their flesh, and stripped their bones. Then he doffed from Kamar al-Zaman his shirt and trousers, which he smeared with the horse's blood, and he took the prince's coat, which he tore to shreds, befouled with gore, and he cast them down into the fork of the road. Then he ate and drank, and mounting, set forward again. And when Kamar al-Zaman asked why this was done, he said, What is this, O my brother, and how shall it profit us? Marzawan replied, Know that thy father, when we have outstayed the 2nd night, after the night for which we have his leave, and yet we return not, will mount and follow on our track till he come hither. And when he happeneth upon this blood, which I have spilt, and he seeth thy shirt and trousers rent and gore-fouled, he will fancy that some accident befell thee from bandits or wild beasts. So he will give up hope on thee, and return to his city, and by this device we shall win our wishes. Quoth Kamar al-Zaman, By Allah, this be indeed a rare device. Thou hast done right well. Then the two fared on days and night, and all that while Kamar al-Zaman did not but complain when he found himself alone, and he ceased not weeping till they drew near their journey end, when he rejoiced and repeated these verses. Will tyrant play with truest friend, who thinks of thee each hour, and after showing love desire betray indifference? May I forfeit every favor if in love I false thee. If thee I left, abandon me by way of recompense. But I've been guilty of no crime, such harshness to deserve. And if I aught offended thee, I bring my penitence. Of fortune's wonders, one it is thou hast abandoned me, but fortune never wearieth of showing wonderments. When he had made an end of his verses, Marzawan said to him, Look, these be King Gayar's islands, whereat Kamar al-Zaman joyed with exceeding joy, and thanked him for what he had done, and kissed him between the eyes, and strained him. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, till it be morrow.